had two guys in ski masks with sawed-off shotguns try to bust into my house.
Yeah, you had a kick door. You had a home invasion.
If I hadn't been home, they got in the house, and it would have just been my wife and the kids.
Oh, wow, yeah.
I need something.
Yeah.
I need something that can do the job when I'm not here.
So that's when the concept of the Midgard Mastiff started. Yeah. It was for home. It was going to be a protection dog, basically.
Welcome to NWA Connie Corsos podcast, where we talk all things dogs.
Welcome back to NWA Connie Corsos. We talk absolutely everything dogs. Today we got David Ishee here. How you doing, man?
Oh, doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Good. Oh man, I'm in it to win it as always. So, you from Mississippi?
I am. Yeah, right.
Born and raised.
Yeah, Mendenhall.
Really? Okay, cool. Yeah, me too. Arkansas. We you already got some kudos with me because you're from the South. yeah. So you know the culture here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It ain't soft here, not yet.
Yeah.
So you're a DIY scientist. I saw you on I was doing some reading your bio. You was in a movie on Netflix as well, right?
Yeah.
What was the name of that movie?
Unnatural Selection. So
Natural Selection. Okay.
Unnatural Selection.
Unnatural Selection. So that was about gene modification, something we're gonna get into tonight?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's about genetic engineering.
Okay, cool. And you also the creator of Midgard Mastiff.
Right.
How would we classify that, as a hybrid dog or a composite breed or however?
They're a band dog.
They're band dog. Okay. All right. So while we here, define a band dog in your terminology as
sure.
You know we need to do.
So, this is where people don't agree. So to me, band dog in the traditional sense obviously refers to a tied dog that guards property, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in my mind, band dog is a working breed that doesn't have any particular lineage, right? So it doesn't have to be a mix of this or that. It just needs to be a dog that can do the job of a band dog, which is to guard property and do big game hunting if need be. Right. So I see it as a real broad term to catch a lot of different animals, right?
Everything, it's starting to change.
Yeah.
And we'll get into some of these. Some of them I'll say is buzzwords nowadays that I'll ask you about.
Which is why I stopped calling them band dogs and started calling them Midgard Mastiffs.
There you go. So what's your upbringing in dogs?
Well, my family's always been dog breeders.
Mm-hmm.
I see my great grandfather bred foxhounds and beagles, and then my grandfather had bred beagles, and we kind of kept that line going on through. So I grew up raising beagles, and we did a lot of rabbit hunting and things like that.
Okay.
We have like a rabbit pack and a deer pack, and we'd hunt, either or. Kind of let the dogs pick which one they wanted to be in. We tried to start them all in rabbits, but inevitably some of them would catch wind of a deer, and he'd never run a rabbit again.
Oh, really? Yeah. Yeah. So, I interviewed my first beagle breeder the other day. Learned a lot. Yeah.
They're great little. They're surprisingly tough little dogs. I mean, they a working like a hunting line beagle is from the moment he wakes up, he just thinks rabbit until the moment he passes out from exhaustion from thinking rabbit too many times. Has nothing else on his mind. There's not a lot in a beagle's mind. There's only room for one thought, and it's rabbit. And so, that's my first exposure to like really like dedicated working dogs. Otherwise, the dogs we had were just random mutts that walked up, and we just had them as yard dogs.
Yeah, I just talked to a fella about the beagle. What is your thoughts on the beagle and just companion homes? All of them don't make the cut, right?
No. So if you got like a show line beagle or some pet bred beagle, it would be one thing. But beagles aren't really great. Like a working hunting beagle is not really a great pet because they want to hunt a lot. They're
Right.
they're not homebodies. They want to run. If you crack the door open, they're gonna
Boom.
haul ass down the road, and they're gonna be running everything. And they've got
Right.
a great sense of smell, and they're very loud. So they're bred to bark whenever they smell anything. And you'll have a beagle in your backyard. He'll smell a squirrel, and he's gonna start baying, and it's not gonna stop for hours.
Yeah.
So you're better off with like a Labrador.
Right. So, but that beagle also, it does a different sound when he's on a hunt, right?
Yeah.
What do you call that sound?
I just call it a bay. So
A bay? Okay.
yeah.
All right. Yeah.
It's just more of a, but it varies wildly on the beagle. And the beagles we had were more beagle-y than beagle. We had some blue ticked ones, and we had some different ones, but we had
y'all have the lemon and white ones?
Yeah.
Okay.
But none of ours were registered. This was an old line, and I know my grandfather and various people had put other stuff in there, just whatever worked. And
Right.
so that's obvious.
What do you mean other stuff?
I mean, beagles don't normally come with blue ticks, but we had some. So some blue tick in there, and I'd be surprised if there wasn't, who knows what was in there. But it's just whatever did the job. And we at one point bred them to where their nose was too hot, and they'd run yesterday's rabbit, and we had to breed them back. And at one point they got a little too fast, and we had to breed them shorter again because they started catching the rabbits. So that was sort of my first exposure to this idea of like shaping them over the generations.
Right.
But I didn't get into protection dogs until I lived in Jackson. But I had two guys in ski masks with sawed-off shotguns try to bust into my house.
Yeah, you had a kick door. You had a home invasion.
Well, they didn't get in. They attempted.
Okay. Now, I know you're a scientist now. They wasn't seeing those test tubes thinking you was cooking up something.
Well, this is before I got
kilos in it.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Okay.
But they were just going door to door. Like they had just come from my neighbor's house and just walked in on them, robbed them, and then came to my house. I was just the next house down the street.
Right.
Jackson's a wild place. And but they didn't get in because I kept my doors locked. And I went and grabbed my shotgun, and they ran away. And so that was the end of it. But if I hadn't been home, they'd got in the house, and it would have just been my wife and the kids.
So, wow. Yeah.
I need something.
Yeah.
I need something that can do the job when I'm not here.
So that's when the concept of the Midgard Mastiff started.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why I started.
Yeah. So it was for home. It was going to be a protection dog, basically.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to ask you that general question that people ask, because he said people always want to know the breed of dog y'all use, but not the individuals and why. Yeah. So walk us through that.
Sure. Yeah. So when you talk to people, especially in the band dog world, people tend to imagine there's like a secret recipe. You just get a little Neo and get a little Pit Bull and maybe throw some Corso in there and a little bit of Doberman, and you've got a magic sauce. The problem is they're not all the same. Like if you bred the world's best Neo to the world's best Pit Bull, you'd probably get some great dogs. And if you bred the world's worst Neo to the world's worst Pit Bull, you'd probably get some terrible dogs, right?
Yeah.
So it's obviously not about the breed nearly so much as it is about the individuals. So if I had to choose between an incredible Neapolitan and a terrible Dog de Bordeaux, I'm going to choose the incredible Neapolitan. But if I had to choose between an incredible Dog de Bordeaux and a terrible Neo, I'm going to choose the Dog de Bordeaux. So forget thinking about the breed and look at the individuals in front of you. Take greatness where you can find it, because that's where it is.
Were these particular individuals bred in a certain fashion? Were you worried about the pedigree, or you were just strictly worried about what was in front of you?
I'm just looking at what's in front of me. I mean, the dog is the manifestation. If I had access to the pedigree, I crossed blood with Lee, I think once really, but since I trust Lee and I know the pedigree behind it and I can get that, then I'll look at it. And as much as I can, I'll look at where a dog comes from. But I don't care about, oh, this is the great grandson of such and such, because frankly, like Shaquille O'Neal's great grandson is not necessarily going to be a great basketball player. Right?
That's true. Yeah.
You know? So like once you get far enough away, it doesn't matter too much. Now, if it's his dad, we're talking about something. But if it's like every generation for the last 10 generations, we're also talking about something. And so you got to look at consistency over time and production. But I crossed a dog one time that seemed like a really good dog. And I looked at his parents. His dad was a really good dog. His mom was trash. And so I didn't like that. So I didn't breed him because I didn't want his mom in there. I bred back to his dad because I was like, if his dad can produce a good dog out of her, he can produce a great dog out of one of my bitches.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. That's actually where Osiris came from.
Okay. Yeah.
So, to as much as I can, I do look at the pedigree, but I look at the dogs in front of me first. But when I'm looking at a pedigree, I'm really still looking at the dogs in front of me because I want to meet that dog on the pedigree.
Right. So, in this concept, did you have size, the temperament, the health, the athletic longevity already in your mind what you wanted on?
Yeah, I mean, I had the end result in my mind of what I wanted the dog to be. I had some of this trickles back to growing up, and I was about 15 or so. My neighbors got some Neapolitans way out in the middle of nowhere, Mississippi, and they were really good Neapolitans for a Neapolitan, right? And I got lost in the woods one time and walked up on their driveway, and their house was way back in the woods. And I walked towards their house, and these two dogs chased me a good quarter mile till I hit the public road. And so I remember how impressive a couple of big dogs chasing you can be on your desire to get out of the situation real fast. So I wanted that first. That was my first idea, was like that night after the attempted home invasion, my wife got so spooked she took the kids and spent the rest of the night at her parents' house in Brandon. And I just sat with a 12 gauge shotgun across my lap in the living room thinking all night.
Man, a father's mind on that would take you into some dark places.
Oh yeah.
For sure.
I mean, I had a toddler, and she didn't stop having nightmares until she saw the dogs working years later. And then I had a baby, like still nursing baby. And so I just sat there and thought about what I needed. And what I came to was those Mastiffs, right? And then I got to looking at the state of the Neapolitans. I was like, this is not the dogs I ran from. This is not what I remember. And they were a mess. And then I got to looking into the history of them and biomechanics and all of this stuff. And finally, I came to where I wanted to end up. I wanted something that was, strong enough to defeat a man, fast enough to catch a man, agile enough to out jump and outmaneuver a man, tough enough to take a beating from a man. Essentially you need a dog that can physically outperform a man in every dimension you can get it, because he's not going to mentally defeat a man. So you got to give him everything else.
What weight would you say is best?
I like a dog about 145.
Ooh, you like them big. I
do like them big. I think you start getting into like 200 pounders. They're so big.
Yeah, now that's really
that's too much in my opinion without doing some real significant changes. But 145, the amount of power and effort that can be output, like the man it would take to absorb what a dog that size can put out for as long as that dog can put out. People talk about stamina, but my thing is, if that dog can go for a minute straight, a 145-pound serious dog can go for a minute straight without gassing out.
Right.
How many men can survive the fight for a minute? There's not a lot of men in the world who put up with that. And I mean, I did martial arts for a decade, taught in Jackson for years.
What kind of martial arts?
A bunch of them. I studied a bunch of different styles and kind of combined them. But I did a bunch of, full contact tournaments and all this stuff. And I did a bunch of stuff all through Jackson. And I know how much power a man can put out. I know how strong some men are.
Give your dog the best start possible. We offer proven tools, products, and supplements backed by our real-world experience and our passion for healthy dogs. Oh, yeah. It's some very powerful men. Well, we do a lot of wrestling. My kids participate in wrestling, so we got some boxers there too, and kids that make kickbox, and it's some men that could do some damage. That I've seen some fights in my day, brother.
Yeah.
That made me walk away and say, I ain't never getting back. I ain't getting into it with nobody ever again.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not a little guy, but I've had guys who you wouldn't think were this strong. Just pick me up with their offhand, left-handed, and just pick me straight up off the ground. Just make you feel like a baby. No, that guy needs a big ass dog to take him down.
That's right. Yeah. It's some very, and in the South, it's some no pun intended. We have some very athletic black dudes and some very strong white boys. Go to Alabama.
Yeah.
Them some big white boys that will mess you up, man. I'm telling you. It's very powerful, man.
Yeah.
Man, let's go back to something. Yeah, for real. So let me show you something right quick. Let me share my screen here. You was talking about the Neo. And you were saying something about you read up on and envisioned the old style of Neo is what you were saying?
Yeah.
So can you see my screen?
Oh, yeah.
So would you say, let me pick one. Would you say something like that on the right, more leaner versus the
that's what more like the dogs they had. That's still not a really impressive dog, but he's a lot better than most of the others on the screen.
Right. Yeah. And that's more like today, if not worse. Yeah. Sorry.
If not worse.
Sorry, Neo breeders.
I mean, some of these dogs just look more like they're built like the idea of most Mastiffs forms is that they're trying to breed a dog that's kind of like a bear in looks, but really what they're breeding mostly is a dog that looks more like a cow, and they run like a cow and they move like a cow.
Shaped like a barrel.
Yeah. And they've got the flexibility in the trunk, and like they don't understand that like to get to top speed, four-legged animals have different gaits, right? So they have like walking and trotting and all these things. And predators, you notice predators have really short legs relative to most of the prey animals, right? Like a horse runs like 40 miles an hour, and so does a greyhound. But a greyhound has much shorter legs than a horse.
Yeah.
But a greyhound has an additional gait. They have another way of running that horses don't have. So when horses run, let's see, what is it? Transverse gallop is like their last gait, and the dogs can and other predators like cheetahs and whatever can also hit a rotary gallop. And so that style of running, and I may have crossed those two up. It's been a minute since I looked into it, but that style of running has to do with being able to bend in the middle. So all these herbivores with these big guts and multiple stomachs and all this stuff, they're just not flexible in the trunk, right? So they can't do that dog run where they're mostly jumping, where they legs in front of the front legs hit the ground and then leap forward. Yeah, and so that style of running gives them extraordinary speed and mobility, but it's because they eat meat, so they don't need a lot of guts. They don't need multiple stomachs and super long intestines because they're not eating hay. so they can bend in the middle, and that flexibility is what gives them their speed and maneuverability. But when you get rid of all of that by just building them like a barrel with legs, it's gone. They lose their speed, and you wonder why it's gone. Why can't they move? It's not because they're 150 pounds. There's plenty of wolves and big cats that can move that are hundreds and hundreds of pounds.
That's true, David.
Built right.
Yeah. Very good points. Very good points. What colors do your dogs come in?
Everything.
The
color's not something I select for, so they're just all over.
Okay.
They're very consistent in a lot of ways, not in color. I got fawns and blacks and merles and I even got some black and tans and brindles and brown and blue and combinations thereof. So like brown brindles and then blue brindles and then like black and tan with brindle stripes and just every combination you can imagine. I'll have a litter of 12 puppies and I'll have 12 different colors.
Really? What's the life expectancy on them?
Like 11-ish.
Pretty good. Yeah. And I know they probably, being a Mastiff, loving of the family. Yeah, super loving. Yeah. So during this process, you probably had to put some dogs on the ground and selection. But before we go there, let me ask you this, because it's a big talk right now, and it's a talk you've probably been hearing for years upon years, but it keeps resurfacing. Pure breed versus mixed breed. I don't know what you feel about this, but to me, mixing a dog is bringing two breeds together, and that's a mix. Some people are saying crossing. Would that be the right terminology for you? I don't know if it's a new age stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean like crossbreeding, mixed breeding. It all kind of
same thing. Okay, all right, yeah. Maybe I think sometimes people use outcrossing.
Yeah. So generally, when you talk about outcrossing, that's more within the breed. So like,
breed,
yeah. Typical terminology is more like you'll have like a breed, and then within that breed you'll have like you could inbreed, you could line breed, or you could outcross. So you could breed within the line. Let's say it's the whatever line of Labradors, right? Some line started by some dude. And you could just breed dogs that are only descended from that line, like all the time. And then that's just what you're doing is you're breeding. And then you want to outcross, you'll breed some other breed of Labrador, some other line of Labrador. But then if you bred in like a pointer, well, now you're crossbreeding.
Okay. So, gotcha. So within this talk, pure breed, crossbreeding, or whatever, right? And earlier you mentioned that your grandfather would use dogs no matter what the mix was, as long as they did the job.
Yeah.
And historically, there has been maybe pure breed was even defined at some point how they did the work. Okay.
Yeah.
So nowadays you hear about the decline of dogs, about the decline of like the neo, different Mastiffs, different Dobermans, just the decline. What are your thoughts on, because this has been a hot topic, should you ever have to bring in another breed of dog to fix a pure breed dog, or should you be able to look within the breed and select superior animals?
So it depends on how genetically diverse the breed is, right?
Okay.
So I'll tell you a quick story. The Dalmatian's a good example of this. All Dalmatians have hyperuricemia. And so it's a mutation. And
you actually worked on a project to fix that issue, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so, go ahead. I'm sorry.
The Dalmatians have hyperuricemia because of a mutation. That mutation is in every Dalmatian in the world at one time, right? So at one time, every Dalmatian in the world had that. And the AKC went out and looked for a healthy Dalmatian anywhere. And they tested a bunch of them. And they looked all over the world to find any registered Dalmatian that was healthy. And they could not find one. So there was a geneticist, I forget when it was, 70s, 80s maybe, who decided he was going to fix this problem. And so he outcrossed to pointers, which is the breed that Dalmatians came from in the first place. And he did that one time, and then he back crossed it to Dalmatian over the generations. 15 generations later, 30 years, the AKC can't find a healthy Dalmatian, and they won't register these crossbred Dalmatians, even though they're 15 generations from the last outcross, right?
Yeah.
And so finally they go, okay, we're going to register these Dalmatians or these low uric acid Dalmatians as purebred Dalmatians. And so they brought in that healthy gene from an exterior breed because it didn't exist in the Dalmatians anymore because they've been too inbred. And so if you have a healthy version of all the genes in the population, you don't have to go outside the population for it. But if the whole population is affected, there's no other option. Well, other than genetic engineering, there's not another option. And so but there's a lot of breeds that are that way, especially with polygenic traits. So if you have a gene, a problem, like let's say hip dysplasia, like pugs and English bulldogs, I think are still the worst for hip dysplasia. It's something like 80+% of them have hip dysplasia. And because hip dysplasia is multiple genes that have gone wrong, it's not just a hip dysplasia mutation. It's a bunch of genes that are bad. It basically means every pug and every English bulldog in the world has at least one of those genes. So the odds of being able to like reconstruct it and make a healthy one, much less an entire breed healthy, is going to take hundreds of years.
Okay, gotcha. Man, let me take the audience back up to a little bit on a history of you because we're finna go down a rabbit hole. So this young man here, audience, he's been on a self-taught path. He's a graduate level CRISPR tech. Could you explain to us what that is?
CRISPR is a new kind of genetic engineering. It's a new technology that uses essentially you can think of it as like an enzyme, but there's a protein called Cas9 that you can put a special RNA in, and it will guide that protein to cut DNA in a specific place. And so it's a really easy way to cut a genome, and it works in basically everything we've tested it in: bacteria, fungus, animals, plants, everything. So it's nice because it means you can use one system to genetically modify a bunch of different things. So if I want to genetically modify an animal, for example, like I did on Friday, like yesterday, before I left work, all you have to do is you have to get the components for CRISPR, right? So this is going to be the protein Cas9, the guide RNA, into the cell that you're trying to modify. If you're just trying to break a gene, which is called a gene knockout, it's super easy. That's all you need. If you're trying to knock in a gene or change a gene to a specific thing, you also need to give it a template, a repair template, which is just a little stretch of DNA that shows the cell what it should have instead of what it does have. So essentially, it's a really cheap, easy way to do gene editing that's been around for 10 years, something like that.
10 years,
15.
Yeah. When I was reading up on you, I was reading about glow in the dark dogs. I was like, man, what's up with this guy? What we got going on here? But I started reading further. I was like, tell us a little bit more about that aspect. The glow in the dark thing I was reading.
Yeah. So that has to do with a different mechanism. So genetically modifying an animal really depends on two things. So you need a method to modify the genome, in this case CRISPR, but there's a bunch of other methods, right? So older methods, like you can do random integration of genes, you can do things like talons and zinc finger and all these other methods, right? But we don't have to worry about those methods right now. But there's just a bunch of methods that are like the molecular machinery inside the cell. But then you've got the second part of it, which is how do you get that stuff to the cell, right? So that's your delivery. So there's a bunch of different methods for delivering genes to the cell. And this is where people get confused and really want to kind of mash those two categories up. But step one is to get whatever it is that you're going to put in the cell. And then the second step is it has to now do its job inside the cell. So most basic typical way of like making a gene edited animal usually is you just take like a fertilized egg cell, right? So just a one cell, like let's say it's a dog egg cell, right? So you had an egg and a sperm, they've made a dog, and now you're going to like stab it with a needle and inject DNA into it, right? That's the most basic form of animal gene editing. And so when you pull it out, now your DNA is inside there. And if you used CRISPR or whatever other gene editing method, it'll go through and do the modifications. Now you implant that into a dog, she gets pregnant, gives birth. Now you got a gene edited dog, right? The problem is that's difficult and expensive for a lot of reasons, which is why you don't see a lot of gene edited dogs. But there's a bunch of other ways that people have explored, viruses to deliver genes, all kinds of stuff to deliver genes. But one of the method I cared about, because here's the core problem with dogs. There are hundreds and hundreds of genetic diseases, right? So dogs have about 700 genetic diseases that we've categorized. And for context, wolves have about 7. So we've multiplied the number of genetic diseases by 100-fold by just doing a bad job. And that's our fault, and we should fix it. And so, we have, created this problem, and we have the tools to fix it. The problem is the scientists who are doing all this genetics and stuff are trying to cure human diseases. They're trying to cure like sickle cell anemia and Huntington's and things. They're not trying to cure dog genetic diseases. And the dog breeders don't have access to these tools. So they're trying to use the same breeding methods that we've been using since the Ice Age. I mean, literally tens of thousands of years we've been breeding dogs the same basic way. Just like that one's a good one, that one's a good one, they should have puppies. And we got some new things with like gene testing, and that's great, and that's going to speed things up, and it's going to kind of take the blinders off. But at the same time, the methods to really speed things up are these newer technologies. The problem is there's no dog breeders in the world that are going to be doing egg extractions and microinjection, right? I guess except me. But like the most you can reasonably expect thousands of people to do is got to be something with sperm, right? And there's a handful of papers that have done what they call sperm-mediated gene transfer. And so I spent several years working on that, because sperm-mediated gene transfer apparently works in pigs, according to the papers, but nobody's ever done it in dogs. And so that's where you just take the sperm, you genetically modify the sperm, and then you do artificial insemination. And dog breeders do artificial insemination every day.
We do, yeah.
And so if you could make a simple way to do artificial insemination, to modify the sperm in a way that dog breeders could actually do, then that's a tool you could hand all the dog breeders in the world and say, hey, Dalmatian breeder, add this magic liquid to the sperm, give it an hour, and then do your AI, and it'll CRISPR this genetic disease away, right?
Give your dog the best start possible. We offer proven tools, products, and supplements backed by our real-world experience and our passion for healthy dogs. Whoa. Yeah. So you don't have any funding or anybody who's approached you about do it? Really?
No. The problem is it's hard to get people to take you seriously, right?
Right. Well, I know that
give everything away and just teach everybody how to do it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So in 2017, the FDA ruled DNA as a drug. How does that play a part in your business?
So it's a little bit, the timeline's a little bit different. So I think the original ruling was 2009.
Okay.
They decided that a transgene, so a gene that comes from another organism, like if I put like a jellyfish gene in a dog to make it glow, for example.
Yeah.
then the dog would that new gene is the drug, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so 2017, I'm talking to the FDA because you're supposed to, and I'm an idiot, and they were like, before you start gene editing animals, call us, and so I did. But they and so I'm trying to be legit about this. I'm trying to go through the process, right? Because I don't want to get shut down halfway through it by the government. So so I go through the process, and they're like, well, we got a new guidance coming out, because I'm saying I'm not going to add a transgene. I'm not going to put a gene from another animal in there. I'm just going to fix a mutation. So like the at the time it was the Dalmatian thing, because the gene called SLC2A9, right? So it's a solute carrier gene. So it helps urea get from the bloodstream into the kidney cells, right? It's a little protein that sits on the membrane of the cell, and it's a tube that sucks urea out of the blood, basically.
Okay.
And then the kidney cells break it down, and it goes away. And you pee out the stuff that it breaks down into. Well, if that little protein is broken because the gene is broken, it just builds up in the bloodstream until it crystallizes, and you get urea crystals in the urine and in the blood and all these other things, right? And so that's hyperuricemia. Well, the whole reason that protein doesn't work is because there's one letter of DNA that's wrong. So, DNA is made of A, T, C, and G.
Yeah.
Well, it's just a T that should have been a G. In all the other dogs, it's a G. And in the Dalmatians, it's a T. And that's what causes the disease. So I just want to change one letter. I'm just going to swip it around from back to what it should be, back to what all the dogs have, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it'll work. And so I'm like, there's no transgene, there's no drug. That's not regulated, right? And I say these words to them. I say these words to the regulators. I'm like, that's not regulated, right?
Right.
So they're like, well, let's have a meeting in about 2 weeks. Then they make a new guidance.
Right.
That new guidance changes the rules. And so now, instead of a transgene being regulated as a drug, any intentional genomic modification is regulated as a drug.
What? Dang.
Yeah. So modifying the genes in any way on purpose is a drug. And that means that it needs to go through the same kind of veterinary. It's like a veterinary drug. So it has to go through the same approval process, have to open a new animal drug, a new investigational animal drug file. So I have to go through all the process that you would go through to make like a new kind of dog vaccine or a dog, like headache medicine or something, So like some kind of dog drug is now, just to turn them from mutant to not mutant anymore, is apparently a drug. So, because it's not the injection that's a drug, it's not the DNA that's a drug, it's their genes that are the drug now. How do you even control that?
yeah, right.
Like, and then if I breed that dog, the offspring of that dog now carry that drug and have to be like filed with the government. And so, what if you breed that dog to a healthy one? You can't tell where the healthy genes came from. Are they the modified healthy ones or the natural healthy ones? They're identical.
Right.
So
Right.
how can you do unenforceable nonsense, right?
Yeah.
And they even, just to drive the point home that it wasn't about protecting the animals from genetic manipulation, that it was about controlling the access to the technology, they even specifically exempted random mutagenesis. So I could do random mutagenesis, and that's unregulated. So if I just took dog sperm and bombarded it with gamma rays until it mutated, and then inseminated a dog and made mutant puppies who are all deformed and messed up, that's fine. No regulations on that. They specifically wrote that that's fine.
Yeah.
And so it's like, y'all obviously don't care about like the genetic integrity or the health of the animals. Y'all just trying to control who can use CRISPR.
Right.
Like, if you're going to use CRISPR, you got to talk to us first. And so,
right. Okay.
So it's just about control. And the whole point, to my mind, is that this stuff has to be available or it's never going to do any good. Like right now, the low hyperuricemia Dalmatians, because they're just like a test case for all these hundreds of genetic diseases that need to get fixed, right? They're like purebred now because AKC said they are. And so people are breeding them, but you can't just stop breeding all the other Dalmatians in the world because there's only a small number of them. And so all the other Dalmatians in the world have to like interbreed with these guys. And then they're going to have some sick puppies and some healthy puppies. And then you got to select and then you got to breed. It's going to take hundreds of years for those genes to get out there. And if you did just chop it down to just this small population, they're all descended from one litter. You know, now you're back to super inbreeding, which is the core problem in the first place, is there wasn't enough genetic diversity in the population. If they've got some other issue that you're not aware of yet,
it's going to pop out.
Find out because it's going to be the whole population.
Right.
So the core problem is still just, you know, there are times when you need to reach out, but it's still a slow process, you know, without lots and lots of back crosses going simultaneously, or, you know, using gene editing to just fix hundreds of them in one generation, or then you'd have hundreds of unrelated Dalmatians who all have healthy genes that you could breed to each other and to the rest of the population. You can speed the thing up by generations.
What is your thoughts on Embark?
I think they're fine. I think they're better than Wisdom. You know, I think people should be using them, especially if you're not like able to do sequencing or things like that yourself. You know, people are. I think it gives breeders. I think the whole like breed identification thing is a little weak because it's statistical.
I was going to ask you about the accuracy of it. Have you ever used it for accuracy?
No, I've never really run it because I can do DNA tests myself. So,
okay.
But in terms of things like, if you got something that's like 12 generations of breeding, it's okay. But a lot of these things, so they don't read the whole genome, right? So they just look at like 100,000 different spots, and they read 1 or 2 letters in those spots. So they're doing just screen genotyping, right? Not whole genome sequencing, which is a whole different technology. Whole genome sequencing runs you about $1,000, and so they'll read every letter of DNA in the genome. But with things like Embark, they just look at like known spots that do something, right? Mm-hmm. So they know that like this spot has to do with hair color, and this spot has to do with like height, and this spot has to do with whatever. So they just read through those, and so they can tell you some traits, and they can tell you diseases mostly, right? Because diseases are pretty easy to spot, not always, if they're complex and they involve a lot of genes. Mm-hmm. But typically, if you got like if you got like 5 puppies in a litter, and one of them is like really messed up, you can sequence the 5 healthy puppies and the really messed up one, and you can just have a computer go through and compare the differences, right? And then you're like, okay, here's a bunch of places where this puppy is different from the rest. And then you find you have another puppy that's messed up in the same way. He's got the same disease. You do that again. Eventually you're like, okay, they all have this. Every time one's messed up that way, they have this, you know? And so you can point out that mutation, and then you do some experiment. You mutate a rat so that he has the same mutation as the messed up dogs, and you're like, there it is. That rat that we mutated was born with the same kind of problem, you know?
Right.
And so you know that causes that disease. And so when you know that, then you can just start screening for it. Then you can just add that to the Embark, you know, or Wisdom panel thing, and they check that, and it's like, yep, your dog carries for it. Your dog doesn't carry for it. You know, these 2 dogs do carry for it. Don't breed them together.
What are your thoughts on the Genome project? You ever heard of it?
Like the Human Genome Project, or
they did a dog one too, but
yeah, I mean,
probably similar.
Yeah. So I mean, it's great. I mean, I think we should sequence as much and of everything as we can, because like the more we learn about genetics in general, you know, they thought it was going to take like 1 billion. They thought it was going to take hundreds of years and hundreds of billions of dollars to do the human genome, right? Because the technology they were using at the time was called Sanger sequencing, and it's just slow and hard, very manual. But the Human Genome Project developed a new technology called shotgun sequencing, which just does a lot of different parts of the genome simultaneously. And so with those new next generation sequencing technologies, it got way faster and better. And so that's why we can sequence genomes as cheaply and easily as we can. That's why it's down to $1,000 instead of a generation of scientists dedicated to sequencing one person, right? You can just go send off and have it done.
Right.
But Yeah, I think we should get every species. And there's databases. Like you can go to NCBI, and it's the national database, and you can search for everything, right? You can go to or GenBank, and you can search for every gene, any gene in any species you can think of. There's some rare frog in the Amazon that's never been sequenced or something. But if you want to look at like camel genes or like a bat gene or like dog genes, or cow genes, or any kind of animal that you're likely to run into in your life, they're there.
Are you into any other animals?
Yeah. So like at work, I work for Embryo Corp. But I do a good bit of mouse genetic engineering.
Really?
I've done horses, cats. Haven't done dogs yet. We're gearing up. I've done frogs, and what other animals? I think that may be it for animals. I've done plants and fungus and bacteria and all sorts of other stuff too.
Let me ask you this, David. I don't think there's any question I can ask you that you probably can't answer, but beagles. You got a background in beagles, but it was a lot of science experiment on those dogs. Why was that?
They're cheap, and so science has a tendency to create standard models, right? And so, like you're talking about lab mice, right? Lab mice aren't just any old mouse. Like it's not the same mouse you go to the pet store and buy you a mouse, right?
Right.
There's discrete lines of lab mice. So there's like black 6 lab mice, and there's like Swiss white lab mice, and the very specific lineages of lab mice, right? And then there's like, and it's the same thing with like frog. You have Xenopus tropicalis and you have Xenopus laevis, and it's the same thing with all these things. Rabbits. You have rabbits also. I don't think I said rabbits. Also done rabbits. Rabbits, like everybody does the oh geez, I can't remember.
And while you're thinking about that, man, I took some rabbits up to I picked up some rabbits, right? They was already processed. And this place sells serums and things, different things off there. So I guess rabbit eyes are used for a lot of, I guess they're the closest thing to human eyes. And they do a lot of study on that.
Yeah, you can get a lot. Rabbits are used for a lot of science. A lot of antibodies and stuff like that, or like that's where the serum and stuff comes from. Because you can inject rabbits with things, and then they'll develop antibodies against those things, and then you can extract the serum, and you can get those rabbit antibodies that now bind to those things. And so that's used in a lot of assays, and it's used to develop a lot of, or it's used in a lot of like tests, right? So it's a way to test things. Because a lot of tests, like pregnancy tests, use antibodies and stuff, right? And so a lot of those kind of tests that are based on kind of antibody-based technologies, you use animals to generate those. Now, you may not have animals generating all the ones used in the test, but they'll generate the first ones, right? So I don't want to get into immunology, but once you have some antibodies, because antibodies mutate in your body. That's why you can make antibodies against anything. So it's called somatic cell hypermutation. But basically, whenever you get sick or whenever you're exposed to like a poison or really anything that your body doesn't know already, your body will try to make antibodies against it. And so those antibodies will, inside the cells in your immune system, will mutate. Your immune cells will just mutate and mutate and mutate. And it actually has a breeding facility inside your lymph nodes. Your body does cell breeding. So what happens is these B cells, produce antibodies, right? Just at random. And they're just randomly mutated, just like you would have like a litter of puppies. And so they're a little bit different from each other. Well, you have this substance, some white blood cells will grab it. They'll find like a piece of bacteria or something that got in a cut, and they'll bring it to your lymph node and they'll hand it to these cells, and they'll all kind of try their antibodies on it. And if nothing happens, they don't stick, it's not the right antibody because they're random antibodies, nothing will happen. But if one of them kind of sticks, it will cause that cell to reproduce a bunch of times and mutate more. So its offspring will be a little bit different and their antibodies will be a little bit different. and they'll try. And so some of them, it'll get where it doesn't stick as good, and they'll just die. And the ones that stick better will reproduce even more. And so then it just breeds and selects for better and better and better antibodies over a few days. Those cells are like trying their antibodies, and then the good ones reproduce more and the bad ones die off. And it just is rapid inside your body breeding program to breed better antibody producing cells. And then once they find a really good one, they just start reproducing, and they make, millions of these cells, and those cells make billions of antibodies, and those antibodies flood your bloodstream and go kill off the germs or whatever. So after that happens, you can take one of those cells and you can look at its genes. And when you have its genes, you can see the mutations that made that protein, because antibodies are made out of proteins. So you can see that mutation and you can say, okay, so if we take that gene and we put it in like yeast, now yeast will make those antibodies for us.
Right.
And so now you can make yeast just in a big vat, like you're making beer, and it'll just produce antibodies, and then you purify the antibodies out and you can put them in your tests, right?
Okay.
So rabbits and stuff are used in the initial part because you can just inject them with things. And then when you extract their blood and all these different things, you can do all these tests. And then you can, if you want to produce these antibodies at scale, you can have something like yeast produce them.
Gotcha. Let me ask you this. If the FDA didn't have regulations on some of the stuff you do, where would the Midgard Mastiff be? Where will we have some wings on that bad boy by now?
I wish. I'm not that good. So there are some genes I've been really interested in. Now, some of this is technical, right? So part of the reason that things have gone slow for me is because sperm-mediated gene transfer in dogs just hasn't worked. So my main goal was to do sperm-mediated gene transfer, which was where the glowing thing came from, right? So if I can test that sperm-mediated gene transfer works, I put the glowing genes in there, modify the sperm, which I was able to do. I've got pictures of glowing modified sperm, right? So I can get DNA to bind to sperm. Problem is I don't get puppies from that sperm. So I haven't figured out what's wrong. Nobody ever has. Dogs, unfortunately, are weird when it comes to advanced reproductive technology. Now, I have made dog cells glow, and I've done cloning, and I've done other stuff with glowing cells from different organisms. And I've made lots of other animals glow, mostly frogs. But the big thing is the glowing genes is about testing the methods. And once you're confident that your methods work, then you can start doing harder things. Because honestly, just dumping glowing genes in there is relatively easy as compared to more specific things. Because if you're doing multiple things at once, like I'm going to try this new method of getting the DNA to the egg cell, sperm-mediated gene transfer in dogs. And at the same time, I'm going to be trying CRISPR. If it doesn't work, you don't know if CRISPR failed or if sperm-mediated gene transfer failed. If you just do one, then you're like, okay, puppies glow. I know that works. Now I'm going to try CRISPR. Now that's not working. What's wrong with it? Because I know the sperm-mediated gene transfer works. So it's all about that. With my new job, I say new job. I've been doing this for like 5 years now. The things I work on at work, hold on. I gotta rein in what I can say.
Yeah, watch it now. Let's don't get in trouble.
Yeah, exactly. Because not everything's public yet. But with some of the stuff that we're working on, there will be a lot of stuff that we can do with dogs, and I am working on some stuff with the Midgards to that regard. But the genes that are the easiest will probably be glowing and things like that. But there's a lot of traits that I would be really interested in. So I think your real question is what genes would I want to add?
Here we go.
So the genes I would want to add. So there's actually, and I hate that they beat me to this, there's actually some direwolf genes that I'm interested in. But I've been looking at the direwolf for years prior to them actually finding the genome, right? Because for a long time, nobody had read the genome of a direwolf. They've been extinct since the Ice Age, right? And most of them, the skulls that we have are from the labreus tar pits, and that just destroys DNA, right? And so I was waiting for some scientist somewhere to find a skull in somewhere that they could do a ancient DNA extraction. Well, they found some in Utah in a trap cave. I think it was Utah. It may have been one of these dry states. And so it was in this trap cave where just like animals fall in sometimes. And so they have a bunch of skeletons at the bottom. And they found some dire wolves in there, and they drilled into the teeth, and it still had a little bit of, like, in the root of the teeth, a little bit of DNA had survived untouched, right? And so they were able to sequence the DNA, and so they did like several different dire wolves. And so for years I have been wanting to put some dire wolf genes in my dogs, right? Because I think dire wolves have a more perfect skull than the gray wolf, and which, not that dogs are descended from gray wolves, and they're definitely not descended from dire wolves. They're descended from like a much smaller wolf that's to like Central Asia kind of area, and so they've sort of spread around the world from there. But and there's probably multiple domestication events, but there's several genes in there that I'd be interested in. Unfortunately, Colossal Bioscience beat me to it, and they put a bunch of dire wolf genes into a gray wolf a few years ago, or earlier, or I guess last year. I guess it was last year, and they made their dire wolves. So that's one thing. There's some stuff I would want that's more leans towards like synthetic biology. So there's some things we know in mice that will extend their lifespans. And so I would love to do some of that, because Mastiffs, unfortunately, are just going to live short lives. Yeah. And there's some things where I would want to give them, similar to the antibodies we were talking about, where they express from before they're born the antibodies to kill things like parvo, right? I would want them born immune to parvo, basically.
Oh, wow, that'd be awesome.
I think every dog should be born immune to parvo. Parvo's a nightmare. I hate parvo with a fiery passion.
Yeah. What about rabies?
Rabies would be a great one, but rabies is hard. I mean, rabies is possible, but it's hard because every mammal is subject to rabies. So, and I don't think I guess that's just the normal immune system.
Distemper is something that could make you think an animal has rabies, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of diseases that can cause similar neurological symptoms. Yeah, and so, rabies is a nasty one. Rabies is nasty. It's like that almost 100% fatality. People don't understand how deadly rabies is.
Yeah, it's bad. Yeah, it's really bad. Yeah.
Like, if you have symptoms for rabies, you will almost certainly die.
Yeah.
I think there's only been a handful of people that have ever survived, and that's because they put them in like a medically induced coma for months and then chilled their body on ice till they were almost dead from hypothermia. And that's what it takes to barely survive rabies. And when you come out of it on the other side, you have significant brain damage.
Dang. Wow.
So like, rabies is rough.
You might well go and be with the Lord. Yeah.
If you get exposed to rabies, luckily it's slow. So you got time to get the vaccine and get antibodies to rabies and kill it before it kills you. But by the time it makes it to your central nervous system, where you start getting symptoms, because you won't have any symptoms until it gets to where it's too late. Right. But by the time it gets there, and you're starting to like have motor control problems and difficulty swallowing and all this stuff, you missed it.
Give your dog the best start possible. We offer proven tools, products, and supplements backed by our real-world experience and our passion for healthy dogs. So, you're a science guy. You're a guy that want to see things better, but in the natural order of life, the Mother Nature has a way of cleansing itself. So even with the science part, how could you say, well, I don't want to get too in front of Mother Nature? You know, how do you make it even, Steven?
So I think part of what I want to do is use this technology to go back to nature a little bit.
Okay.
Like, I know it seems odd, but like, there is nothing in the English Bulldog that is natural. You know, it is a mess. That poor dog. I mean, they can't even breed naturally anymore, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, they used to be a great breed. You go back to like and that kind of goes back into your point earlier about the decline of dogs. It's not a modern thing. It's not something that just happened. I mean, you look at pictures of the English Bulldog in the 1700s. So you look at like paintings of 1600s English Bulldogs on to like 1800s. They were ruined in that 100-year span. You know,
good point. Yeah, good point. Yeah.
and so it's all about the quality of selection. You know, if you select for trash, you're going to get trash, and that's unfortunately whatever time period we're selecting bad is what time period we're going to get bad animals. I'm personally of the opinion that the best dogs ever bred are in the future still, because everybody likes to think about the dogs in the past.
Yeah. And we don't, get into that, because we don't necessarily know what them dogs in the past was like. Because, you know, we got the Connie Corso, War Dog, all this stuff, carrying lanterns and stuff like that. You can't put a war dog. Well, this is my shirt from school, boy. You can't put a war dog in a family nowadays.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And at the same time, there's a lot of mythology. Like, there's a bunch of people nowadays that are just making stuff up, and there's a lot of people back in the day who made stuff up. People talked as much shit about how great their dogs were in the 1500s as people do right now.
Yeah,
people have not changed. Dogmen are just the same as they've always been.
Yes.
You can read English dog breeders' letters about each other from hundreds of years ago. They talk the same shit dog breeders talk now. You know, they're just the same guys, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's just like, my dogs are great, your dogs are trash. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Or they're like, that's a really good dog. What's it going to take for me to breed that dog? You know, and people are buying and selling and importing and exporting dogs and all these things.
Yeah.
Now, the difference that we did have in terms of working breeds is the dogs were worked. We didn't have dog shows. So we had a bunch of dogs that were, if you were a cow dog, you were working cows. If you were a hunting dog, you were hunting. If you were a war dog, you were fighting something, whether it was a guy in an arena or a dog or a horse on a battlefield. You were engaged in some kind of conflict. And so the selection criteria for those animals was harder than just, you know, you got a 35-degree angle between the stop and the slope of the muzzle, and I measured that with a protractor and all this nonsense, right? And so we select for nonsense, and we get what we select for, right? You get that angle, you get that 35 degrees consistently, because that's what you breed for. But do you get work and hardiness and courage and good solid nerves? No, because you're not selecting for that. And so when you have a selection process like that, that transitions from the function to the form, then that's what's going to change. You're going to have loss of function and gain of form. And I would imagine dogs nowadays look a heck of a lot better than they did hundreds of years ago. You know,
I would imagine too. Yeah, I heard somebody say they wouldn't want a Rottweiler back that looked like the one back in 1910.
German Shepherds, right? You look at a German Shepherd from 100 years ago; they look scruffy, right? People would kick them out of the dog show. They'd be like, "Oh, skinny and this, and looks like he's half, you know, Malinois or something."
Yeah.
And so people have, people are just getting what they're selecting for. And the root problem with that is when you're talking about working dogs, if you're not selecting for work, then you're not really building working dogs. You're building show dogs and calling them a working breed, but they're still just show dogs. And so if so when people talk about decline, that's really what they're talking about. But that happened to different breeds at different times, right? And so I think we'll see like the decline of the Malinois eventually. If people start using like robot dogs instead of Malinois, then the Malinois will fall off, and people will be like, "Yeah, Malinois ain't got anything in them, have no drive."
Yeah, they'll say that. Form follows function, right?
But it can.
Yeah, but it's not around the corner. It's not. It's you know what I mean. So like when you're talking about function and workability, is that something that just throughout the evolution of dogs took care of itself because of the function of the dog?
I think it took care of itself because we were using them, right? Because we needed them. If a dog wouldn't, like if a cow dog wouldn't work cows, you didn't keep him, and you certainly didn't breed him. And so the ones you had were ones that worked, right? And you didn't worry about his pedigree, and you didn't worry about his whatever. You worried about his dog. His dad was a great cow dog, and he's a great cow dog, and his kids are going to be great cow dogs.
Right.
And if they're not going to stick around. And so it's just functional selection gives you the form that meets the need, right? So and to a certain degree, people do intelligently pick things, right? So like our beagles got too tall, they got too fast, they start catching the rabbits instead of just running the rabbits in a big circle, right? And so they start actually wearing down the rabbits too fast. Beagles can't be too fast, or they stop being, they're supposed to just chase a rabbit for eternity. Basically, they're not supposed to actually catch up to the rabbit. But rabbits are a lot faster than beagles, but they don't have the endurance of a beagle. Beagles will just run for hours and hours and hours and hours, and a rabbit will run really fast and wait for a second, and he'll run really fast and he'll wait for a second, catching his breath. But if they're just too on his heels, he'll never catch his breath, and he'll eventually just tire out, and they're just going to catch him. He's just going to be too tired to run, and they'll tear him to pieces. A pack of beagles will destroy a rabbit in a minute. Little cottontail does not have much in them. So so you have to breed them a little shorter, a little slower, right? Like you're too fast. And so the short legs is functional also, because if you're running through a bunch of brush, you need a dog that can get everywhere a rabbit can get. So they need to be about the same height as a rabbit. And so, just a certain amount of conscious selection happens, but at the same time, you get a bunch of just generally, if you just stop looking at any of that and don't think about it, and you're just like, this one's a good one because it gives me rabbits, and this one's a bad one because I don't get rabbits, you can still just select purely on how many rabbits are in the bag and wind up with good dogs at the end. And so,
how many generations are you in on your breed?
Oh,
would you call it a breed?
Not really, but
a type of dog.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I tend to think of it as my line of dog. I don't really like the concept of breeds, honestly, because pretty much all breeds, I think of breeds, people tend to think of breeds like a race or something, but really breeds are more like a family, so it's like Boxer, like the founder of the Boxers was just a dog named Boxer, who they bred to a female, and then bred him to his daughters, and then bred him to his granddaughters. So all the Boxers are just their kids. So like the Boxers are just like a family of dogs. So like if you never breed outside the family, you're gonna have issues, right?
Yeah. So like when you got all the different types, I guess it'll be from selection within that family,
And so my dogs are not limited to just breeding within that thing. So I don't think of them as breed, because I don't want to be like, okay, they're all only ever going to breed within this bubble, right? Really, to my mind, it's my line of dogs is how I think of them. And I imagine they'll go away when I do, but but at least Midgard blood has wound up in basically every band dog program out there. So
really, okay,
they're all over the place.
So this is a question for you. With it being, is type set? Do you still get a lot of variation?
I'm pretty tight now. I have some variation, but not nearly as much. I have it whenever I introduce something new. I'll have a big bubble of wiggly type for a couple of generations. And then, like when I brought in Achilles, right, I had a lot of Neo-y dogs that I had to select down from. But that was generations ago. So, like, my current generation is 12th generation but that's tracking back
wow.
to even dogs that were before I started, right? So that's all the way into the original crosses.
The original crosses.
Because I didn't necessarily breed every crossbreed. I didn't start with like I didn't start with pure breeds on every front, right? So like
Okay.
some of my dogs are started crossbred. A lot of them started crossbred. So like one dog that I have blood out of is a dog named Raheen, who's half Great Dane, half Dog de Bordeaux, and his brother was half Great Dane, his half brother was half Great Dane, half American Bulldog. That was dominant. But I didn't do those crosses, but I did breed to both of those dogs. And so, you know, and then you go back more generations a different direction. Then I have some out of like Lee's line, and that goes back to like that even goes back through Levi out through like Ace's stuff out in California. So it's like a big web if you go all the way back to
Right.
foundations.
So when you hear this crossing across breeds, this method, one of the biggest names we always hear is Swinford.
Yeah.
But it didn't necessarily start that whole movement or that ideology.
No, I don't think
with
so.
him. Did he just popularize it or something like that?
I mean, he was definitely one of the bigger names in getting people going. I mean, there's also like it depends on the area you're talking. He was earlier, right? But you also got like you could say Lucero did more to popularize the idea of a band dog probably than anybody, just because he was a good marketer.
What's his first name?
I'm terrible with names.
I know it. I forget it.
But yeah, I mean, he was mailing people like videotapes in the 80s of dogs. Right? I mean, like this is like some hardcore marketing. And you know, but the idea of band dogs is ancient. Like Shakespeare even references band dogs, right? In some of his plays. So I mean, this is an old idea, this band dog. So I mean, people have popped up with it. So the modern sort of interpretation of it as being like a I say Swinford did a lot to put the modern idea of it being sort of a Mastiff Bulldog cross in a lot of people's heads. And you know, I think he probably was more leaning towards like a gladiator dog than really a protection dog. But but I think, you know, the general modern breeder has access to better dogs than any breeder has ever had, right? Because you have access to the whole world's dogs. Like I can get sperm from a Tosa from Japan tomorrow if I want to spend some money.
That's true.
You know, that's not something somebody 100 years ago could do.
Yeah.
You know,
I can get we got Tibetan Mastiffs out the mountains.
Yeah. I mean, I can get blood from any dog on the planet right now.
Yeah.
And so if you've got access to the funds or you can trade or negotiate well, you can get whatever blood you want on the planet. And that's powerful. That's one of the reasons I think the best dogs are yet to come. Because nobody's ever had. You know, these guys in Italy breeding Corsos 100 years ago just had access to the dogs in their hometown.
In their areas,
around, you know.
Exactly. There's nothing but crosses.
Yeah.
That dog is,
And so like, you know, you go back to the sort of original, like you might go back to the 2,000 years ago, some Assyrian king or something has some big ass fine dogs. And he's trading with kings from, you know, faraway lands. But that's like a handful of people in the world that could do that and trade long distance dogs, you know. And you might have in the like 1800s, 1700s had some lords and things like that who had the means to trade dogs with faraway people. But most people with dogs just had the dogs in their neighborhood. Mostly.
Yeah, that's right.
But now anybody has access to all the best dogs on the planet. Yeah. And it may be maybe out of your price range, but then maybe you need to figure out a plan on how you're going to pay for that amazing blood, but you can get it. And you know, if you have a and the better blood you get, the easier it is to get good blood, because now you can start trading. You know,
facts, yeah.
You know, you and dogmen trade all the time.
The time. Yeah.
And you get some great blood. Now, I'll say this. On top of that, gene testing, all these other guys, kings and emperors and stuff, and all their dogs from back in the day, if their dog was carrying a genetic disease, they had no idea. And not all these genetic diseases popped up in the modern era. Dogs have been suffering from these for thousands of years. And there's some that are new, but I mean, the mutation rate's pretty constant, right? So most of these have been around for thousands of years. And so they'd pop up and they'd have one fucked up puppy and one fine puppy, and they wouldn't know anything about genetics and wouldn't know that that puppy's a carrier. And some of his puppies are going to have it.
Yeah. They wouldn't know it until they saw it.
Yeah.
Affect the dogs. Yeah.
Exactly. And they might chase that for generations, but now you just swab him and send it off to a company, and they send you back a file, and you read it and go, oh shit, that dog carries for a genetic disease. I probably shouldn't use him. But his other brother, who's not like a color I like, but you know what? He doesn't have a genetic disease. I'm gonna focus on him.
Right.
And so all the tools now give us much better advantages, and give it a little more time, and you'll be able to say, I do like this other dog better. He's a better worker. He's a better whatever. Unfortunately, he carries for this genetic disease. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fix that. I'm going to just genetically modify that dog and get rid of it.
Right.
One of the ways you can do that is with cloning, right? So you can take some cells from that dog, modify the cells to fix that genetic disease, clone the dog, and now you have a clone of that amazing dog without the disease, and you breed the clone.
Is there any downside to cloning?
It costs $50,000.
Yeah. Give your dog the best start possible. We offer proven tools, products, and supplements backed by our real world experience and our passion for healthy dogs. But you can clean up that genetic disease, right?
So-
and that's a dilemma dog breeders have now without their technology.
Yeah.
Great dog being a carrier versus a sorry ass beautiful dog that's
or even the
free of
dog
genetic.
that has a disease that doesn't manifest until they're 5 years old or something, you know?
Like the Doberman, the DM and the Doberman. Yeah.
Yeah. It could be the best Doberman on the planet. Just an incredible dog, checks all the boxes, the best thing you've ever touched. And right now, the choice you have to make as a breeder is, do I breed him knowing he has a genetic disease and hope that I can get a son or something off of him who's just as good or almost as good, who's healthy or just a carrier, and then I can try to, over a few generations, select away from it. Oh, and in the meantime, produce a bunch of sick dogs also. Or do you try to do something a little more advanced? And one thing you could do is you could produce a bunch of embryos, genetically screen them, and then only implant the ones that are healthy. Or you could clone that dog with gene editing, which is not a service you can get. You can get cloning, and they just clone the dog. Well, you used to get cloning. I don't know if they still offer it. Biogen, the main pet cloning company in the US, just got bought by Colossal Bioscience. So I don't know if they're going to leave that open to the public or not, or if they're going to change the prices. But you could just clone the dog, and it'd be exactly like the original. Well, I mean, as much as a clone ever is. Clones are never exactly like the original because they don't live the same life, right? They start in the same place, but environment is a big factor. Exactly. You know, diet, exposure, all these things. Like the dog's not a machine. But if you take a dog who's got incredible genetics, except for one little flaw, and you can gene edit out that one problem and then clone that, you can have a clone who's got the same genetics and even better because he doesn't have that one problem. And then you can go forward from there. And that's expensive because you got to get somebody to gene edit the cell line, which honestly isn't that hard. And then you got to get somebody to clone it, which is hard, but not as hard as people probably imagine. Like, that's something I've done at work, right? With rabbits. But, you know, you literally just stab the cell with a glass needle, suck out the nucleus. Then you grab a modified cell with a different glass needle and you shove it in there. And then you just put it in some special media so that it starts to absorb calcium. So it activates the cell. And then it goes through and then you implant. The hardest part, honestly, with dogs is collecting eggs, because nobody's ever figured out how to make the egg cells mature outside the body. With other species, you can induce ovulation, right? So like with a rabbit or a frog, you can give them hormone shots and they'll ovulate on demand.
Mm-hmm.
Dogs don't do that. They got their own cycle.
Right.
They cycle when they cycle. And most people collect the eggs and stuff by doing like spay and neuter clinics, right? So you go get a bunch of eggs or a bunch of uteruses with ovaries from like a spay clinic, and you've got a bunch of egg cells, but you don't know where that dog was in her cycle.
Right.
And so you just have to get lucky to find mature ones.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they'll do a lot of times, they'll just take blood tests at the same time and test them for progesterone. And then you just have to pick through and hope you find some mature eggs, because you can't set the cycle when you want it. You can with cats, you can with a bunch of other stuff, horses, all these things with hormones, but nobody's figured it out with dogs. And then when you have that egg cell, you can pull out its genetics and put in whatever genetics you want, and then keep it growing, implant that. And then when that female has babies, the babies have the genetics you put in them, which is from the cells that you started with. And those cells can be from whatever dog.
You might not like this, but the American Kennel Club probably gonna call you. Hey, David, I heard you the other day. Now, what'd you say we could do to fix some of these issues?
Oh yeah. I wish they would.
Yeah, it'll be nice. They're gonna hear it. I know they are. I'm gonna get ready to wrap it up, but I got about 3 more questions. It's a very good interview, very exciting. I like it because I didn't make straight A's in school, but I'm able to keep up with you, right? You know how to break it down to a layman's man term. You know what I mean? Yeah.
No, I only went through 5th grade anyway. No,
really?
I was homeschooled after that.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And then I did. I just got a GED.
But you targeted what you love, what your interests are, and that makes you working to your strengths. That's for sure.
The great thing about the internet, man. I mean, all the information's out there. You can learn anything you want to learn nowadays.
That's true. Yeah. Even I was looking at some stuff, certifications. You get them online.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You ain't got to go to college like that no more. You get your certifications online from Microsoft, because they was preaching this college thing, but and you go into them tech fields, and when you get to the job, they don't know what they don't know what we need them to know.
Yeah. And also, it may not be worth the money anymore.
Yeah, it ain't. Yeah.
So what these degrees go for?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And if you ain't no athlete, whew. Yeah, for real. Big term in dogs, hybrid vigor, right?
Yeah.
So how is it passed? Can it be maintained in a line?
Yeah. Okay. So that's a great question. So a couple of things. Hybrid vigor essentially is about genetic diversity within one individual, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a concept that you got to get first, which is that you have 2 copies of every gene, right? So that's not true for every species, especially when you get to talking about plants and shit. They have like 1 million copies of every gene. But like humans and dogs and most of the animals that you're going to think about when you think about animals are going to have 2 copies of every gene, one from your mama, one from your dad. And so what you're going to get is you're going to get half your mom's genes and you get half your dad's genes, and together it's going to be a whole you. Well, if you have and so that's diploid genes, right? So you get two of each. Well, when you make a sperm cell, you pick, randomly one of those, and it's got half your genes. It's haploid. Now, the issue comes about due to something which is recessive traits, right? So most of the genetic diseases are just a broken gene, right? So like you got 2 genes. Let's say this gene makes some liver enzyme, right? Well, you got your mom's copy and your dad's copy. And let's say your mom's copy has a mutation from just randomness, right? Well, it's fine. You got your dad's copy. And so you have some functional liver enzymes. Maybe you don't have as much as you should, but enough to get by. Maybe you have the normal amount. Sometimes these genes are regulated so that one broken copy has no effect at all. Maybe it has a little effect. But if you had 2 broken copies, your body wouldn't know how to make that liver enzyme. And that could kill you depending on what that enzyme does, right? or maybe just make your life suck. And so you have those two genes. And so now you have a little redundancy in your own body to genetic defects, right? Because you have two copies of each gene. So if one breaks, it's okay. Usually you have a backup. Now, if you have a really inbred line of anything, dogs will say, really inbred line of dogs, if they all have the same mutations, right? So let's say here's a gene that won't necessarily mess you up to the point that you're just broken, but let's say the liver enzymes that this version of the gene makes are, slightly less than optimal, right? So you're not very good at handling toxic stuff, and so this dog gets sick a lot, he eats plants and he's down for days or something. And so, it's whatever. You just learn to deal with it, right? And so it just becomes a thing people know about the breed. They're just like, don't feed them this or they'll have a problem. Like collie-based breeds, you can't give them ivermectin or they'll just die, right? Because their multi-drug resistance gene is broken. And so every other dog is fine. It's Heartgard, right? And so because that gene is broken, it may not affect you unless you hit the right circumstance, but it might kill you. And so when you crossbreed, the odds are, so you'll have let's say you have a Dalmatian and a pit bull. Pit bulls have some problems and Dalmatians have some problems. And most of the time they don't have the same problems, right? And so you might have this bad gene for, let's say, SLC2A9 in Dalmatian, the uric acid gene, but the pit bulls is fine. So they have one functional copy and one broken copy. And then let's say the pit bull brings in, I don't know, some other broken gene. We'll say this liver enzyme I was talking about. And then the Dalmatian one is fine. And so you have one functional copy over here and one functional copy over here. And so the hybrid has a high probability of having at least functional copies of genes from each parent. So it's just about the ways in which their problems don't line up to be the same problems. Where if you're inbreeding, their problems are probably the same problems because they got them from the same places. But because you're coming from two different sources, the problems don't line up because you have genetic diversity in your own body, basically. And so that's where hybrid vigor comes about. And typically it manifests as healthier animals, bigger animals. So a lot of times they'll have bigger litters and just generally be more robust and vigorous. And this also happens, but this happens at a more extreme level. And it's not typically used in the context of within families, within a species. Typically in science, it's used when you're talking about like a horse and a zebra, right? So you're crossing some very different animals together, and you can get the hybrids, which will be much more vigorous. And it's more true in plants than it is in animals because they have more copies of more genes, right? And so, but there's a certain amount of it, but it's not as big an effect as a lot of people talk about. Now, the problem is if you do that and you get your Dalmatian pit bull line and then you start breeding them to each other, well, now all your hybrid vigor is going to go away. As soon as you start inbreeding, it's going to start going away pretty fast. Now, the root population has more genetic diversity than the original two populations, and that's fine. But if you start inbreeding, then you start running into where those they both can end up with broken liver enzymes, broken kidney proteins, or whatever. And so it's just about getting the genes, the good genes, to cover up the bad genes. Basically, is what hybrid vigor does. It doesn't eliminate the bad genes; it just covers the bad genes with good genes. And so it gives you a short-term boost of vigor. But if you breed into a consistent line, you still have to eliminate the bad genes.
That's right.
And so, hybrid vigor is great for that. The best reason to crossbreed, to my mind, is to increase genetic diversity so that you can make changes, right? If you wanted to make a Doberman different than a Doberman, it's going to be really hard if you keep breeding Dobermans, right? If you want to make them taller and longer and wider and all these things, it's going to take a while. But if you crossbreed them, now you can make changes really fast. And so the dog that you produce after a few generations can be very different because you've introduced new genetic diversity, and then you can select out the genes you don't want. And so the changes you wanted to make in the Doberman can happen really quick. So like when Doberman wanted to make his pincher, he used what, 4 breeds, something like that?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
And so he tossed them all in a pot, got a pool of genes, selected out the shape and functions that he wanted, and then he wound up with the Doberman pincher, and then he solidified that into a line that now we call the Doberman. And so creating change is what you get from crossbreeding, right? Like you get hybrid vigor, but the main thing you get is the opportunity to select for something different than what you already have.
Great points. Great points. Great points. Give your dog the best start possible. We offer proven tools, products, and supplements backed by our real world experience and our passion for healthy dogs. All right, man. Well, I'm getting ready to wrap this up. I'm gonna do I call it a rapid fire, but take your time. Best books for the audience. You can recommend it. Yeah.
I'm not great at this one. People ask me this one. For the audience. Yeah, I'm not good at this one.
Okay.
If you really want to learn a lot about how cells work, molecular biology of the cell is a good one, but it's
right.
it's not
gonna be a tough read, I bet.
yeah. But I tend to prefer a lot of scientific papers, honestly. To
Gotcha.
I guess that's my recommendation is don't be afraid to read through the real science behind this stuff. Don't be intimidated. You don't need a degree to read this shit.
Right.
They word it hard, but just when you hit a word you don't know the meaning of, go look it up.
Yeah, look it up. Yeah.
Keep doing that until you know all the words.
Exactly. Now I know you don't just necessarily agree with the concept of pure breeds, but if there is one or a couple out there that you see that dog is in pretty good state today, which ones would those be?
Depends on the functions. Just in general, I'd say a lot of the terriers are in pretty good shape. Pit bulls are in pretty decent shape. A lot of the like little terriery mix, some things are in decent shape.
Lauderdale, things like that.
Yeah, things like that. Little I can't even remember names of dog breeds right now. So many dog breeds have problems. I wouldn't say any of the Mastiffs are in good shape as a breed. Some of the more some of the breeds like a Corso and things like that are better than most of the Mastiffs. But they got a lot of problems when you compare them to just dogs in general. I'd say the healthiest breeds are generally going to be the breeds that are either recently doing their actual work, like cow dogs and things like that.
Yeah.
Still in function.
Hunting dogs.
Or who are dogs that are not recognized by major organizations yet.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Another one here. Scientifically in that world, who has been some of your biggest inspirations?
This is gonna sound a little self-serving, I guess, but Michael Faraday probably.
Okay.
The biggest one. He never went to school. He just worked really hard and taught himself and did a lot of experiments back in the days of like early electricity, and he discovered a whole bunch of fundamental things about how electricity works, and a lot of stuff is named after him. And he couldn't like, we call it like Maxwell's equations, but it was Faraday's work, but Faraday never learned how to do the math, so he had to rely on Maxwell to do the math for his discoveries. But he was still one of the best scientists of his age, but he never went to school for it. So he always kind of inspired me that, like, even without a degree, I can still do this stuff.
Right. Well, I think I'm gonna wrap it up with that one. I've had a good time with you. Hey, KC about to write us that check. I'm gonna get a little cut off you.
Oh, yeah. Hey, if they call me after this, I'll definitely cut you something.
Yeah. But
Fine.
man, I definitely appreciate you coming. It was a great interview. And how do people reach you? Where can they find a lot of your work?
I've Facebook, Instagram, all those regular things. I've got a Patreon. You know, I used to post a lot of stuff, educational stuff on YouTube, but then YouTube demonetized me and took down a lot of my stuff, and because they got scared, I was teaching people how to genetically modify bacteria and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And they got nervous.
Right.
But you know, that's some stuff I had to learn how to do, right?
Yeah.
So and a lot of this stuff's scary easy. So so a lot of my YouTube is stripped down, and but you can find my old videos still up on Odyssey, and most of my recent work I only put on my Patreon just because I don't want to get, you know, blocked anymore. But yeah, if you just look up David Ishee on Instagram or any of those things, and of course, you know, there's a bunch of articles and documentaries and stuff I've been in. So if you can look up just David Ishee, a bunch of stuff come up.
Cool. All right, man. Thanks again.
Thank you.
All right, we out, y'all.
Step into the realm of canine wisdom with our podcast, NWA Connie Corsos, where we interview dog men and women from around the globe. Discover their talents and insights on breeding, training, nutrition, and the rich history of dogs. Tune in to the most underrated yet influential dog podcast on social media. Your journey into the dog world starts here.